Hello, this is Russell Allman from the Choristers Guild, and welcome to the Open Fifth podcast, where we discuss musical notes from churches, schools, the community, and everything from C to G. Now, today we're going to be talking about how to maximize your musicians' time and their talents. Now, this is especially for groups that are, volunteer groups, like church choirs and orchestras or community choirs and orchestras. But really, this is meant for anybody who has a group that has limits, whether that be time or in talent. Now, if you think about it, that's pretty much everybody. Whether you have a school group where everybody takes it for credit and they have to be at a certain time, you still are limited in your rehearsal time. Or a community group that meets once a week and you're still trying to figure out, how do I fit in all of this repertoire into an hour rehearsal a week? This is the podcast for you. So we're going to be discussing a lot of different ways that we can maximize the time that we have or don't have in our rehearsals. And also we're going to be looking at, how do I maximize the talents that I have within my group? And how do I encourage the less experienced while utilizing the professionals that I might have? So we're going to be talking about a vast array of different things today in regards to those matters. Now, if you haven't checked out the podcast before, we are on our third episode so far. So feel free to go back and check out the other two. But in each episode, we really try to hit a specific topic. But today, I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a brainstorming platform. So I'm going to touch a lot of different things in a short amount of time. And hopefully, as we go further, we're actually going to address some of these matters in more detail. So if you have one that piques your interest, or maybe something I didn't cover that you're wondering, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I will definitely take a look at those and see what we can bring up in future episodes. So this is going to be a broad overview as we look at some of these ways that we can maximize our time and the talents of the people that we have in our groups. So first of all, time. We all know this is a problem. I don't have to show you that we all have a problem with trying to maximize the time that we have in our rehearsals. For example, if you have I was in a community handbell group where we had 3 hours a week on Sunday night. And we fit those 3 hours, we fit everything we could into those 3 hours, because we knew we had 16 songs that needed to get ready in a season, and they had to be good. So how do you maximize that time? If you have 50 minutes 3 times a week at a school, how do you make sure that 50 minutes has everything that you can have in it? Or maybe you're at a church and your time just got cut. How am I going to still get that same amount of repertoire done in a shorter amount of time? My dad is actually a choir director, and we just had this conversation a few months ago because his rehearsal time was cut down a little bit, and he had to decide, how do I make sure they still want me to sing every week with my choir? How do I actually get all these songs prepared? So we're going to look at some of those tips that might help you if you're in one of those situations. So first of all, one of the biggest things is organization. You're like, okay, Russell, I understand I need to be organized, but let's look a little bit into how we might actually be able to do that. Now, I'm an organizational freak. Anyone who knows me knows that I love to organize things. So this is right up my alley. So this might be a bit much for you, but just try it. If you don't like it, that's okay. Modify it, do whatever you like. But here's an idea. You actually might be able to schedule every single minute of your rehearsal. You might think, okay, that's crazy. No, hear me out. Think about, okay, I have to get a song ready every week, but I also need to be preparing for songs for future weeks. So let's say I'm going to spend 15 minutes on the song that's ready for next week, make sure it's good. Then I'm going to take the next 3 weeks of songs and work 5 minutes on each one of those. And then I'll leave myself 10 minutes at the end to either review what we're doing for next week or work further on one of those extras, or maybe if you're in a good spot, introduce a new song. Something like that. Give yourself some kind of schedule instead of just saying, well, I want to cover these 5 songs today. Because it's easy to just fall into one song, or, not knowing what, if you have the plan, that's going to help you really organize and make sure that things get done when they need to get done. You can even set a timer for yourself and say, okay, I know that I'm not going to watch the clock because I get so enveloped in the music. I'll put a little timer on your phone that goes off on the music stand that says, okay, your 15 minutes is up. Let's wrap it up, move on to the next piece, because we only got a certain amount of time to do it. So just something like that to make sure you yourself are organized for a rehearsal. Now, another thing that you might want to try and do is maximize what you are doing in the rehearsal. So that may be in warm-ups or in how you're teaching it. Maybe a children's choir, and you're trying to decide, do I do this from, by rote, or do I try teaching the notes? Things like that. Well, there are lots of different resources that you can get. Choristers Guild, we publish some of those. We're, as a nonprofit, that's our goal, is to publish materials that can help you in these type of ways. So I would say check out, make sure that you come prepared with different activities, different techniques that you will be able to accomplish what you need to in the amount of time that you have. But another thing that you can try and do is actually maximize the time that you don't have. And you might think, okay, that doesn't make sense. How do I do that? Well, think about this with me. If you can maximize the time of the people in your group when they're outside of rehearsal. Now, this takes some ownership by each of the individuals in your choir, orchestra, or whatever group you have to actually practice outside of rehearsal. But if you equip them with materials that will actually help them do that, they are much more likely to actually do that for you. One of those things is actually sending home recordings, or sending home maybe not the sheet music, but actually if you've checked out our YouTube channel that you are on right now, we put a lot of our new releases as scrolling videos with the full PDF and the recording behind it. Well, they can actually use those in order to practice on their own. So maybe try and see if whatever piece you're using, if there's a video like that you might be able to send to your choir that they could practice with. Or just encouraging, if you're struggling in a section, to make sure that you are trying to work on that at home. And that can be a way that you can maximize the time that you actually don't have in rehearsal. And a lot of that is just communication. Communication to your people and providing them with the resources that they need. And that does take time on your part, but if you can maximize your time in order to maximize their time, they will appreciate it as well. Wasted time can be one of the most frustrating things from a director or from a singer or player position. But also, so we talked a little bit about maximizing time, but what about maximizing the people that you have in your group? Maximizing the talents that they have. A lot of times we, especially in church groups, which I've been mostly involved with, we have a wide variety of talent levels. You might be privileged to have a professional that's, maybe someone who has sung in, community choirs and professional choirs all over. And so they can pick up any piece of music and know it. But then you also have the people who just are there to serve or there to enjoy music. And those people are so important because they raise the spirit of the entire choir with just their love for the music. So it's important to have all of those different people within your group. But you also need to make sure that you are challenging your professionals, but also not bringing out things that are so difficult that your amateurs are completely overwhelmed. So part of that is on you in picking pieces that are going to be accessible, but also maybe pushing your choir a little bit every now and then. But also utilize the people that have those skills. Maybe have section leaders that you can break out into different groups, and they help those, help seat them by the people who need a little bit more help so that they can, mentor them and help them. So a lot of it is knowing your people well so that you can put them in the right positions that they need to be. And that takes time. You're not going to walk into rehearsal number 1 and know exactly what that looks like. That's going to take time, and it takes effort. One of the best ways that you can maximize your people is by getting feedback from them. This might even be at the beginning of the season or semester, depending on what you're doing. Just have a card that everybody fills out. For example, choir. Maybe you're going to have some solo parts that are going to come up. Have somebody put if they would be interested in a solo, just in general. Have them put what their experience is. Just things like that, so you can get an idea of where your choir is and what people might be willing to do. You might be surprised that somebody who might have been quieter and not shown as much interest might actually be interested in a solo and have a lot of experience in that. And they might shine in that role that you'd never expect them to. So a lot of it is knowing who your people are. But it takes time. And of course, we've already said time is limited for all of us, and I understand that. But I hope that this gives you a little bit of an idea, just some ways to think through what can I do to maximize the time in my choir? What can I do to maximize the people in the group that I have? And I hope that this will just start you off as you begin to think about those things. We're going to dive into some of those topics even further. So I'm going to have some guests that will come in that might be able to hit a specific how to plan your whole semester in repertoire, things like that I hope will really be helpful for you all. But please, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, anything really resonated with you, or you might just not be so sure about something, please leave a comment below, and I would love to interact with you all as we encounter these different things. Share your experiences, just anything to get our conversation going so that we can discuss what we can do better as directors and leaders. And of course, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe and notify so that you get to know every time that we are going to go live and premiere our next episode of the Open Fifth podcast. And we hope that you will stick around and check out some if you haven't seen it yet, and let us know if you have any questions. So make sure that you are listening up so that you hear what the next note is on the Open Fifth podcast.